Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 29th meeting of the Albany County Legislature's Law Committee. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay.
Marvelous.
Marvelous. Good to hear. Thank you. Has anyone reviewed the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make a
Yes.
motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham, and a second by Mr. Bergdorf, I believe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. Great. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Items 2, 3, and 4 are being tabled at the request of sponsor, which brings us to item 5, creating a special committee on rules review and legislative modernization. Chairman Joyce, would you like to say some words about this?
Good evening, Vicki. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Back in 2017 or 2018, we formed a modernization task force at the Albany County Legislature, which led towards a lot of the implementation of Granicus and the purchase of these iPads that we're using to go remote, and a number of other things. Given the pandemic and some of the things that we learned over the course of the pandemic about working remotely, and some of the capabilities that have been afforded to us by the state legislature in terms of open meetings and what we can do and how we meet, we thought it was a good idea to combine our legislative modernization effort along with a rules review and a rules reform effort to bring our several decades old rules into the 21st century, make room and account for some of the remote meeting capabilities that we do have if it does get extended past January, and just implement some common sense changes to the rules, which staff council know where a lot of the low-hanging fruit is. But we wanted to bring some of our members in on the discussion to do a thorough, consistent running review of our rules and our modernization efforts and make it a priority. So we wanted to make it from a task force into a standing committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Chair Joyce?
Madam Chair.
There you are. Yes, Mr. Bergdorf.
Andrew, I know there are going to be a couple of members from our conference on this, but will our council be able to participate as well?
Yes, when we set forth on this, it'll be no different from any other committee meeting.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
So this will become actually a standing committee.
Well, it's a special committee now, but it will be run, as needed. We can refer items to it. There's work that needs to be done already, but the manner in which we go forward will be the same as we do with any other committee that we have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Was that Mr. Kuhn?
It
Or
was.
Mr. Kuhn, thank you. Motion by Mr. Kuhn, seconded by Mr. Feeney, I believe.
Yes, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Chair Joyce.
Thank you.
Let's jump up to item 14, amending Resolution 389 regarding the Public Defender's Office budget. And do we have Judge Herrick here on this? Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. This is a request for a further no-cost, I stress that, extension of Counsel at First Appearance Grant number 2. This would allow us to continue the first appearance arraignment for all defendants in Albany County through the end of this calendar year. This has already been approved by the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services in July. The delay here was caused, if you recall, back originally, CAFA 2 was approved in 2017, but we didn't get a final contract until over a year later. There's currently a fund balance of $274,600. It's expected that Albany County will spend at least $268,625 of those dollars by year's end, leaving a small residue of less than $6,000, which would then be incorporated into CAFA 3, which will be the anticipated successor agreement.
Very good. Are there any questions for Judge Herrick? Mr.
Madam
Bergdorf?
Chair. Yes, Judge, I'm a little confused. This is all state money, number one?
All state money, 100%.
Okay. So if you've got this year covered, what is the period of time for, or is this to make up a shortfall in 2021?
No, there's no shortfall. We have, this has already been extended. The time within which to complete the grant has been extended. I think I appeared before you less than a year ago on this, and was extended, and we need the additional 3 months in order to best utilize the existing funds that we have received and in January. Okay.
So to be clear, this is just a time extension. It is not
Time extension.
It is not a financial extension, because in the RLA layout, it looked like it was $749,000.
That was the original. Yes, that's the original 3-year grant, and we have 249.9 left of it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. So it's just strictly to give you more time to spend the existing grant.
Right. I'm sorry. There's 268,000 left, not 249. Yes, just enough time to spend the money. That's correct.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Judge.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair Joyce, your hand is up.
Thank you, Vicki. I had to run to another meeting. I just wanted to note the tabling of our opioid disposal local law public hearing sponsored by myself and the majority leader. As many of us saw, the county executive, partnered with local government leaders to talk about it, and required an act of the county legislature to set forth, on it. But as many of the things that we do in the county legislature, they're all very well intentioned, and there's good impacts. But given the unknowns in terms of the fiscal impacts of the opioid disposal, we needed to table. So until we get a full understanding of the impact on county taxpayers, we needed to table tonight. And as we all know, the opioid epidemic is been exacerbated by the pandemic, and it's a major problem. But we need to get some of our financials in order first before we move forward. So we're going to have to table it for a month.
Okay.
Thank you,
Andrew. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Judge Herrick. Are there any further questions for Judge Herrick, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate you being here. All right. Item 15, authorizing acceptance of grant funding regarding the Victim Services Crime Victim Assistance Grant. And we have Ms. Orth here this evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. This grant is year 3 of a 3-year grant that we received in 2019. The grant period will start October 1st of 2021 and run through September 30th of 2022. The amount is the contracted amount that we received when we did get the 3-year grant. It's $144,942.24. And this grant funds 90% of our Victim Witness Specialist Bureau Chief, 100% of a crime victim caseworker, and 50% of another crime victim caseworker. So it funds 2.5 of the 4 positions that we have in our crime victims unit. And this is just a renewal of year number 3, and we will be back next year, hopefully, with another 3-year grant. So,
okay, very good. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Feeney. Second. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Orth.
thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
evening.
You
Take
too.
care. Item 16, authorizing assessment of grant funding, an agreement regarding the New York State Office of Victim Services Crime Victim Assistance Grant. Oops, sorry, I read the wrong one. Item 16 is regarding the Children First Initiative, and Ms. Ziegler is here.
So much for your time. I appreciate it. Last year, we were given a grant by the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, and that grant was supposed to start last summer. And as you remember, we were in the middle of COVID. So they pushed off the start date until January, and still COVID. So it's the same grant funding that we had received last year, but there's a new start date. And to make it clean, we wanted to request to amend our ability to contract with the New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children with a new start date that will end in 2022. But I didn't want to go outside the original resolution, which this time frame does.
Okay. Any questions, or is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Trefini. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. Thanks for your patience waiting.
Thank you. Have a great.
Sure. Item 17, authorizing submission of a grant application to the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services regarding the Upstate Family Defense Quality Improvement and Caseload Reduction Grant.
Good evening, Madam
There's
Chair.
Mr. Alderson. Yes, thank you. How are you?
This is Pat. I'm well. How are you? This is Pat Alderson. So on behalf of the County Executive's Office, the Public Defender, the Alternate Public Defender, and the Assigned Counsel Program, wanted to submit a request to apply for the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services, Upstate Family Defense, Child Welfare Quality Improvement, and Caseload Reduction Grant. The three offices worked on a proposal together for a period of 3 years at $166,000 per year. And I wanted to turn it over to them to present on their respective portions of the application.
Very good. Who's first?
This is Tina Sodi. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good evening.
As Pat mentioned, this grant had extensive collaboration between all three offices that deal with family court in Albany County. And as many of you would know, family court is a very traumatic place to be, especially dealing with families and children. So this grant would provide my office an opportunity to get funding for a social worker, that social worker will assist my attorneys and our indigent clients, especially being parents who are at risk of losing their children, assist them in obtaining services or to comply with court mandated services, which will further result in providing mitigation at the risk of when it comes to family separations, and therefore assisting us to maintain and possibly keep the children with their families while complying with their court orders. So Indigent Legal Services has indicated, and a lot of research out there recently in regards to family court, that having social workers and legal offices is of great assistance to attorneys and indigent clients. So in my office's case, I'm requesting for a social worker, and hopefully this funding will provide such for it. And then I have Mr. DeBose, who also had involvement in this in regards to his assigned counsel program.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeBose?
Thank you. In cooperation with both the public defender and the alternate public defender's offices, the assigned counsel program has two sections of this particular grant. The first is for funding for us to provide training to our panel attorneys regarding the use of non-legal experts, non-legal professionals to help the panel attorneys successfully navigate the quite intricate world of family court services. Most times these panel attorneys are solo practitioners. They have very little training and experience working with such non-professional services, or such non-legal professional services, excuse me. And so the first step for the assigned counsel program is training for those panel attorneys. Our second phase of this grant is to provide a little funding for the panel attorneys to be able to get those services and actually subcontract. The county would effectively the county would effectively utilize the state funding so that those services could be procured on an hourly basis to the panel attorneys. It's more of the extension of services to panel attorneys and therefore to the families that are being represented by them.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bergdorf.
Yes, we have been very lucky so far in that every dollar that we have spent on these programs has been state money. Are we creating any positions which we ultimately are at risk for county liability in the event that the state funding does not go beyond, or does this fit under the as long as the program exists, we're going to pay you for it rule?
We don't have an answer with respect to that. However, based on my experience with indigent legal services and how they have dealt with funding in regards to the criminal sector of our offices, I believe this will be just continuing grant for every 3 years. That has been the case with every other grant we've had with ILS. We have yet to have any grants of ours just out of the blue suspended. I don't anticipate that happening. And currently there is no positions created. It's only if we were to successfully obtain this grant would we create a position.
But this is not under the original state umbrella where it was pledged that all expenses would be reimbursed. This is a new node, if you will.
Judge Herrick, I guess you can jump into that, but my
Yes,
understanding is
I'll
it's
jump
new.
in.
Yes.
Mr. Bergdorf, as you're aware, the Harrell Herring court stipulation settlement provided funding for the increase in expenses to modernize criminal defense of indigent individuals. It did not. It was specifically eliminated any assistance for indigent representation in family court. Since then, the Office of Indigent Legal Services has focused on getting money by separate grants to family court, and they are especially interested in non-legal representation, if you will, by social workers, peers, and other non-legal assistance in order to keep families together. This year, the legislature passed in the budget bill a small amount of money, just a few $1 million, that would go to family courts. And this is what I think every county in the state believes is the legislature's opening to allow for further financial support for family courts. So it is unlikely that the funding for a social worker or these experts that would assist the assigned counsel plan would not continue. But if it failed to continue, then as with other grants, I would expect that the positions would disappear.
Okay, well, that would be unfortunate, but so there is, you are hoping for continuation of the program, and the
Yes.
program as we see it now will be funded for how long?
3
This
years.
is a 3-year
3 years.
grant.
Okay, thank you for the clarifications. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, or is there a motion?
Motion.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Second by Mr. Peter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone who participated. I appreciate your help with what's a very important, very valuable assistance that you're providing. So thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Let's go to item 6, going back down the agenda concerning public hearing on amending local law 1 for 2013 entitled An Omnibus Human Rights Law for Albany County. And our own Norma Chapman is here on this. Ms. Chapman?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, and our chair that's not there now, Andrew Joyce. Thank you for giving me this opportunity just to speak briefly on this local law I about the discrimination with the hair that I'm trying to pass. I'm just looking at, we had to add in there's something that had to be added in as far as with the turbans, wearing the hair on the scarves and the turbans. That wasn't added in on the local law. And I would like to know that if that would be, this is something I need to do. And I was just asking for the support of my colleagues if we would like to sign on to this legislation. I would really appreciate it very much. It would really help the constituents and people that are being discriminated against their hairstyles in the county.
I'd appreciate signing on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, count me in, Norma.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a
Majority-
question, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Sure, go ahead.
Norma,
Yes.
you say this just affects Albany County employees, correct?
yes.
No.
No, I think, Mr. Feeney, can you answer that question?
Well, I think you could have council answer it, but I don't think it just affects Albany County employees. I think it affects any employers in Albany County, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Majority Leader, you are correct. This would prevent employment discrimination based on natural hair texture and/or the use of protective hairstyles or the use of turban wraps throughout Albany County. People could
I
not
have
be
a question.
discriminated against on that basis.
I have a question.
I
Madam
guess,
Chair.
I guess
Sorry.
I was sort of wondering, do we have, I assume you wouldn't be bringing this forth, Norma, unless there were documented problems?
Well, there has been a few of colleagues that have expressed their concerns that has happened to them at a couple of the local assisted living rehabilitation centers. One was Hudson Park. A young lady was asked to remove her head wrap on her head, or she would be written up, sent home. And she expressed her concerns, how embarrassed she was because she was trying to get her children ready for school and going to the daycare. And she put her head wrap on her head. It was sort of a turban on her head. And they said to her, her supervisor said that if you are not, if it's not a religious belief, then you need to take this off of your head. And of course, it wasn't religion. And she took it off her head, and she was embarrassed throughout the day because her hair was a terrible mess. And so that was one of the concerns there that was documented. So that's just one that I can speak
How
of.
would this affect an employer that had sanitary regulations when
I don't
someone's hair did not fit
now
within?
I'm sorry. Well, just to address that, now the sanitary, if you're in a restaurant or, excuse me, I'll say McDonald's, there were a couple of people that were asked to remove a scarf on their head, but they need to put on a net. So that's understandable, the hair net to be put on because you're dealing with food And, so that's understandable. That's not against that. But, as far as, some employers, especially the one that I was speaking of at the Hudson Park Nursing Home, that for some reason, I don't think that she wasn't dealing with food. She was just a worker there. And, so she wouldn't have to put on a hairnet. So the wrap was part of an outfit that she had on. Yeah.
The
Can
fact
I
that the health
can I
regulations would
respond
still-
to Paul's? I'm sorry.
Sure, I know Ms. Whalen had a question, but yeah, I do want to, I'm sorry, who was that? Was that Mr. Kuhn?
No, actually, he can go.
It was I
Please go ahead, Mr. Jeff.
sure.
Then we'll get to
Thanks.
Jennifer.
Well, Paul, just to the question that Mr. Bergdorf was raising, I look at the legislation and it says that you cannot discriminate against someone basically based on their hairstyle, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a job or some sort of, if you've got a job that requires people to wear a hairnet, they would, or something else that covers their hair for sanitary reasons, they would still be able to do so. But they just
Exactly.
couldn't, that wouldn't be discriminating against someone because of their hairstyle. It would only be, so that would be, I don't really see how this would impact that. This basically just says you can't discriminate against people because they wear their hair in a certain way. So I think it shouldn't really impact, some of those sanitary considerations.
Well, I'm just, anytime we say to the business community, we're going to override what your local, what your grooming practices may be, it could have unintended consequences. So I guess, we'll see if people come forward at the public hearing and express those sorts of things.
Yeah, we're just at the
But,
public hearing phase right now.
Right. But
Right.
I think we should recognize that, certain police and fire agencies don't allow hair beyond a certain length. Are we overriding those sorts of
Majority Council, did you want to step in on that?
types of things?
Yes, please, if I could, Madam
Yes,
Chairwoman.
please.
I would note that this law specifically targets unlawful discrimination, not issues of sanitation, not issues of safety like you're referencing. So those would still be applicable. This merely prohibits discrimination based on hairstyle. So
On hiring or on
no,
upon-
employment discrimination generally, like I wouldn't be able to fire someone for wearing locks to work.
My
Assuming
question,
that was sanitary and appropriate safety wise. You could not solely discriminate against them based on that. You couldn't,
Okay.
among other reasons, of course.
I have a
Thank
But I would
question.
note also that the state does already ban this type of hairstyle discrimination. However, it's limited only to twists and cornrows, I believe. So this would just expand on what the state already has to include hairstyles that are becoming much more common currently.
Thank you, Majority Council. Ms. Whalen?
I thought it was unlawful to
you.
discriminate already, period. Like, isn't it already unlawful to do these things?
Only for protected classes and certain specific characteristics.
So,
But it doesn't state, but it doesn't state, we're stating that as far as with the turbans and those types of scarves to also go on the head. The turbans
Yeah, it's a
are
little different.
wrap or they're wraps, and they some people use them as to go along with their outfits, or it's a
or like a
dress
band, what
type
about
thing.
what about like a
Um,
bandana or a scarf? You know how sometimes you wear like a bandana or a scarf? Is that already included or not included? in the state law?
Not the only hairstyle that the state protects are braids specifically and twists. This would expand it to cornrows, locks, bantu knots, poofs, other styles meant to, protective styles meant to protect natural hair.
Mhm.
Is there a motion?
I'll
Because
make
this
a
is
motion.
at the public hearing phase.
Yeah, well, this is
Thank you,
just a
Mr.
public
King.
hearing. I'll make a motion.
We'll have plenty of chances to discuss this a little further as well.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham, for
Thank
this. All in favor of this moving forward to a public
Aye.
hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. Passes unanimously. Let's go to item.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Norma. Thank you. Item 7, concerning a long-term power purchase agreement. Again, this is going to a public hearing. Mr. Reinhardt or Mr. Rogers, who would like to speak on this? Looks like Mr. Rogers. Great. Hi,
Sure. Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. I'm happy to let any sponsor obviously start, but I can provide some background on this and why it's needed. This is a local law request to allow for a long-term power purchase agreement at the site known referred to as the radar tower. Just for some context, the county conducted a feasibility study looking at county-owned properties that may be a good fit for solar development. After reviewing several sites, this was determined the most feasible. And the way the industry typically works to finance a solar project of this size is through a power purchase agreement. And the reason for that is it allows private developers to take advantage of significant federal tax incentives that as a municipality, the county would not be eligible for. So the reason the local law is needed is the county has currently a local law that prohibits long-term agreements of this nature, and this is needed to basically override that law for this specific purpose. So I know there's a busy agenda tonight, so I'll stop there and just say happy to answer any questions.
thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, did you want to add anything or should we go to questions?
I will only say that something Luke said at the Conservation Committee is that some of the details of the power purchase agreement and all are not yet in place. That will depend on specific costs for the site once it gets developed and things like that. So we don't have all of the details worked out here. You'll notice if you look at the material, there was no rate schedule specified yet. So again, this is a public hearing that we're doing now, and a lot of those details will be worked out once the more detailed site design activities happen.
Okay, so if someone has a question that's not about the nitty-gritty details, who would that be? Mr. Bergdorf, did you have a quick question on this?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. My district is across the street. I know this is in Pete Tunney's district, but when I look at the map, I am unclear as to whether or not what the visual view shed will be from Albany Shaker Road. That's sort of question number one. The setbacks are relatively minor, or appear to be, from Albany Shaker Road. And Albany County has agreed to take lead agency on the seeker. But my question is, another question is, what role is the town of Colony going to play? Are they just an involved agency, or are they going to be involved from a planning board point of view? First question I have for you, Luke, is what's involved in preparing the site? Do you have anything, any renderings that would show what the view shed would be? Are the setbacks consistent? And are we doing a full type 1 Albany County seeker? Are we Are we bringing in an engineering firm to do that as part of NYSERDA's grant, or are we taking the big hard look? And what is the role of the Town of Colony Planning Board? It's a lot of questions, but
Yeah, sure. So there's a few there. I'll try
let's
to
start
take
with
them
the first one, clear
in
cut.
order. Yeah, I think I've got it. So a viewshed analysis is being conducted, and we can certainly share that. What the map you're looking at doesn't show is sort of the topography. There is a slope here, so it won't be as visual from the road as it might look just from looking at this two-dimensional map. That being said, there will be, if you're driving along the road, it will be visible in certain areas. Typically, you'll have some sort of protective barrier to address those sort of viewshed concerns or issues. In terms of your second question was in regard to seeker, I believe. We are lead agency. The Town of Colony is an interested party. It is a full type 1, and Siemens which is the project developer, and the local firm they have brought on, which is Labella, are both assisting with that, which is currently underway. And as you alluded to, it is a full type 1. We brought it through the legislature to establish that and to make the county lead agency. No other parties expressed concern with that, or interest in being lead agency. And I think planning board wise, we're having conversations with the town planning department about that. Typically with a county facility or county property of this type, we would not go through the planning board at the local level, but we are having those conversations.
Well, in actuality, when you were talking about doing when we were talking about the veterans facility at the Ann Lee home, Mike McLaughlin and Environmental Council came and did make a presentation before the Town of Colony Planning Board. So there is some precedent for there being some local comment, which I would appreciate if you would consider that it was not just a staff function for the Town of Colony to sign off, but there was some opportunity for residents of the Town of Colony to express opinions and concerns. That's number one. Number two, and you're right, in a two-dimensional map, it does appear to be rather dense. I would really look forward to seeing the viewshed maps and renderings. I am totally in support of solar power. I guess what I've seen of the land around the airport, it has for the most part been used for economic development associated with the airport. So this would be a different type of beneficial usage.
And just on that last point, honestly, one of the reasons we looked at this site, Mr. Bergdorf, is having the radar tower on that site and the restrictions that inherently puts in place really limit the uses for the site. And it's, I think we're confident that radar tower is not going anywhere. So that was factored into
that makes
the
a lot of
decision making.
sense. I mean, I'm glad you sort of pointed that out.
Yeah, that does make sense. Are there any other burning questions right now, Matt? Mr. Peter?
No, we'll just like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Feeney. All in favor of this going to public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Number 8, as we know, has already been tabled at the request of sponsor. Number 9, Majority Council, could you just confirm this is also being tabled?
Yes, it's tabled at
Yeah.
the request of the sponsor.
Great, thank you. 10 and 11 are tabled pending public hearing, and 12 and 13 are tabled at request of sponsor. I think that covers it. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
to close.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Thank you, whoever seconded. I didn't catch who
Matthew.
that was. Matt, thank you, of course. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience.